Hello there. I thought I would do something kind of different. I've done this before, but we're going to sharpen a plane blade. But I want to show you this plane blade. This is a plane from from a number 3 hand plane that I restored. Basically, all I did was clean it up so that I could put it in service. But it's another smoothing plane. Uh, Besides a number 4, you can use it for kind of smaller operations. But if you look at this plane blade, what you'll find is this plane blade is pretty much at the end of its life. When you see a plane blade, usually they've got like a couple inches at least, or more, 3 away from this little notch here, because this little notch sits in like that. The cap iron, or the cap iron, slides in like that. You bring it forward. Of course, I've got this backwards. It goes bevel down like that, but you bring that forward and you bring the ship breaker, the cap iron ship breaker type deal, closer to the edge so that the plane functions the way you want it to. And usually what happens with these is that this blade is only about an inch or so from the tip of it is hardened, and the rest of it is soft metal. So I need to get a new plane iron for this. I thought that I had one, but that didn't work out, so I'll have to find one. But a lot of times what happens, this plane iron is still fairly sharp. I've used it a bit, and I can still feel a nice edge. I could probably take a thin shaving with that, although I do not think, no, it won't shave right now. So it's not super sharp, but it's fairly sharp. I think what might have happened is a lot of these plane irons, if they back in the day, they would buy the plane, and sometimes what they would get is they would get an iron that was too soft and they didn't like it. And so what they would do is they would heat treat it themselves, or when it got down closer past where it was tempered from the factory, they would temper it and keep on using it. I think that might be what has happened here, because it's holding an edge longer than it should. So what I'm going to do, this is a medium India. This is how I sharpen my woodworking tools. A lot of people use diamonds or water stones or whatnot. I prefer oil stones, and I use steel tools made with a steel appropriate to cutting with oil stones. Some of the harder steels you can't really, it's harder, it takes longer to cut them with something like this. But when you sharpen a blade, of any blade, this is not the only edge that you worry about. This back edge, these two planes have to meet at the same degree of fineness to get the best edge. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this on this stone. Now I'm doing this because I want, if you look, you can see shininess here, so it's got like a little hump in the middle. But there's a shininess along the very edge of that. That's what I want. I want that edge to be shiny all the way, and I'm gonna work on this just a little bit. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I'm gonna work on it some to see if I can get a bit better hone on the back of it. And stand by, I want to introduce a different stone to this equation because at this point it's worth it. So let's clean this one and I'll be right back. All right, this is a coarse India. I have a bit more steel to remove than I thought. So I'm going to go down in coarseness and abrasive. I'm going to go up in aggression and down in grit number. I'm just going to work it a little bit. All right. You don't need a lot of pressure or anything of the sort. Just let the stone do the cutting. And that's better. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to clean this stone first. Always clean your stones. I had one guy say, oh, do you think the pioneers clean their stones that much? I don't know, I'm not a pioneer and I'm not trying to be a pioneer. I don't care anything about what the pioneers did to their stones or anything else. I care what happens to my stone. And if you clean your stone properly after you use it, it won't load up as much. It will take it longer to do so, and it will cut well for a really long time without you having to dress the stone or do any other foolishness that you really don't want to have to do unless you absolutely must. So clean your blooming stone. Don't be a pioneer. I'm going to go back to my medium because I want this polish, remember, to be the exact same type of polish as what's going to be on the bevel. Now this would not be the everyday way that I would sharpen this. I'm just kind of trying to initialize that back. So now what I want to do is I want to work on this bevel. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay this on the stone, and I'm going to look. And I'm going to lift that up until that touches the stone. The edge touches the stone, and then I'm going to go forward with it. All right, now what I'm going to do, I'm feeling for a burr, but I want this edge to kind of go like that. Not where you can really see it, but imperceptibly. And so what I'm going to do is, as I'm sharpening, I'm going to rotate pressure from one edge of the blade to the other. Because the reason I want that is I want the corners of this blade to be off of the wood. They don't have to be off very much because I'm going to take really, really super thin shavings that you can pretty much see through with this plane. I just don't want these edges digging into the wood and leaving tracks. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it side to side until I find a burr from edge to edge, from corner to corner rather, all up and down that edge, which I have. So now that I have that burr, I'm going to go back on it, lay it flat. To remove that burr, and then just to make certain, I'm going to take it and I'm going to find that bevel angle and I'm going to pull it back. And I'm going to check, and of course I have a little bit of a burr. I'm going to pull that. Still got a bit of a burr. Lovely. And there's no burr on it. And it's shaven hair. So now what I want to do, once again, I'm going to clean this stone off. But if you look at this bevel, hold on a minute. Now, I don't know if the camera will pick it up, but I can see it. If you look at the edge of this, you'll see how you can see from where it's been polished that these have been, they're lower than this part of the bevel. That's on purpose. And so what I want to do now is I want to go to my finishing stone. In my case, I finish on an Arkansas black. Now I could go through a soft Arkansas and a hard Arkansas and then move to this. If I wanted to, I could do a progression of soft Arkansas, hard Arkansas, translucent and black if I wanted to, or any variation of that. But it's not needed. This is the traditional way that American woodworkers have been sharpening plane irons and chisels and stuff like that for generations. And I'm rocking back and forth. And I have a small fine wire edge on the back now. And that's lovely. That should cut very, very well and very, very finely. Once again, I'm going to clean my stone because I like my stones. And I'm going to treat them like I like them, which means I'm going to keep them clean and I'm going to keep them safe, and whatever else I deem I need to do to maintain them, I'm going to do. Now this is a strop. It's a piece of wood with leather on it. I have chromium oxide paste on this strop. I'm going to place this in a vise. I'm going to put 2 fingers there, like that. Find that bevel. I'm going to put my hand here. I'm pulling straight back and lifting up, coming forward, so that I'm not stabbing the leather or cutting it. Like that. All right, that's polished. Then what I'm going to do, I'm going to lay it flat. And that's gorgeous. You may not use a hand plane, but hopefully you will find this a cool knowledge, sort of. So in order to reassemble this iron cuts like this with the bevel down, and just this very edge contacts the wood. And so what I want to do is I want to put this cap iron. This is a cap iron. This is a lever cap. This can also be called a chip breaker. But in actual fact, this is the iron. The chip breaker is right here. And I'll explain that here in a minute. But there's a screw here. So on the back side of it, where the bevel is not, I'm going to take and I'm going to put that screw in that slot. And I want to be really careful not to hit this edge. I'm going to pull this plane up. And then I'm going to bring this chip breaker as close as I want to the edge. Now I want this really close because I am using this as a smoothing plane, and I don't want it to contact that edge. That would cause the plane to be dull, the plane iron. So I'm going to tighten that down. What this does is, as the plane cuts, the front of the mouth, this is the mouth, this is where the blade comes in, presses down against the wood ahead of the cut, so that the wood is lifted up and broken off. Because what it does, that presses down, the wood comes up, it hits this ramp, which is the chip breaker portion of the cap iron, and instead of digging up under the wood for a very long time where it pulls the wood up and tears it, what it immediately does is it makes the wood do this and break off. That's why these are important. That's why the distance from the edge of the iron and the front of that cap breaker is important. The finer of a cut that I'm going to make, the closer I want that to the edge. And I'm at like a 1/64 or less from the edge of that blade. And so to install this in a hand plane, I'm going to set my hand plane down like this, and this is a lateral adjuster. This piece sits in, rides in here in this slot. This screw fits in here, so this will lay flat. And this rides in this slot, and as I move it back and forth, what it will do is turn the blade this way or that, okay? And so when I put this in the plane, there's a couple of things I want to be careful of. The first thing is when I put this in the plane, I don't want to hit this or this. I don't want to hit any metal to dull my cutting edge. I just spent time getting my cutting edge where I wanted it. And there's a little lever here. There's a screw in the back. What that does is it moves this iron in and out. So there's a slot here on this chip breaker, this cap iron, that this has to fit into. So what I'm going to do, I want to put that centered so that the blade is centered and hopefully square. And I'm going to lay it down like that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull it up until that drops down in. And I'm going to look and make sure it looks to me like there's an even amount of space on each side of that iron. Then I'm going to take the lever cap, put it over that screw and slide it down. And do that. And then from there, I would adjust the plane iron wherever it is that I thought it needed to be adjusted. In this case, I moved it so that it did this number. Anyway, that's just initial. I will advance the blade and use it on a piece of wood until I set it exactly the way I want it. But that's sharpening a plane iron and replacing it back in the plane, and a bit about how a hand plane works. Bless you. I'll talk to you later.